Okay, well, hello. My name is Dave Rittenhouse. I'm a probationary pilot at United Virtual, and this is a video to be submitted for my flight review to become hopefully permanent status. I have gone through this process once before, and Matt Velour has been kind enough to give me some pointers as to how to improve my performance as a 737 pilot. And so this is my second go around, and hopefully will be better. And if not perfect, then I guess I'm sure I'll hear about it. This is again my PMDG 737-800 series with winglets, with United livery, parked at gate B16 at Dulles International Airport, where the weather and traffic have been cleared as per the instructions. And just wanted to start off by introducing you to some of the software that I'm using, so you understand how I'm navigating both with the plane and around in the virtual cockpit environment. I have just downloaded the second version of EasyDock, and I'm still getting used to its quirks, and apparently the developer is also, so it's a work in progress. It has consistently crashed on me every time I've used it so far, but that's okay. It doesn't seem to crash FSX yet, so I should be able to carry on my flight even if it crashes. So anyway, that is what I'm using to manage my views. I'm flight planning with Avlasoft's EFB, and you can see that I'm parked here at gate B16, 14 beside me here. And just a note, I used to use this for checklists with the modules here. The checklists were available, but I have learned that they're not quite as detailed as they should be. So I will be using this to monitor my progress through the course of the flight and to keep a certain situational awareness. I've also grabbed a screen capture of the dispatch from United Virtual's tool to show the fuel that I'll be loading on board as per their example, which is identical to what I'm flying today. Just to go around the block from Dulles International, the takeoff V-speeds and flaps will be different because I'm using PMDG's algorithms to compute all of that, but nevertheless this is here as a reference for me. And lastly, I just wanted to show you the flight briefing that I've put together for myself and my first officer, just to act as a summary of what we're going to be doing today. So we'll be taking off via 19 left, climbing to 6,000 on a runway heading of 191 at 1,000 feet per minute, or roughly 400 feet. We're going to be putting the gear up and programming in VNAV as well as our heading of 191. At 1,300 feet, which is the acceleration height, we'll pitch down and accelerate with the autopilot, and we'll begin to move the flaps up. At cruising altitude of 6,000 feet, we'll be turning right, the first of a series of right-hand turns, first to 280, speeding up to 250 knots for the duration of the cruise, and we'll put in the course of 235 on our MCP. Just a note about the MCP, I do have a Go Flight version of the MCP, which, so if you don't see me dialing in exactly with my cursor, you'll know that that's how I'm managing to do that. The downwind leg will begin as soon as we cross the 235 radial from the AML VOR, turning north to 1010 and putting in a course of 340, which will cross after about 25 miles northwest of the airport. Once we're a beam of Dulles, we'll slow to 210 and begin our descent and descent preparation to 4,500 feet. And base leg will begin by turning at 25 miles north of the field once we cross the 340 radial, again from the AML VOR, turning onto a heading of 100, slowing down to 200 knots, setting a course of 175. And before reaching the initial postfix, Zumi, we'll be descending down to 3,000 before getting established on the localizer. Upon crossing the 175 radial, we'll turn right to 140, which will bring us in line with intercepting Izumi. We'll overfly it at 3,000, tuning into the localizer frequency of 110.1, and landing via the glide slope on a reference speed of 147 plus 5 for contingency, landing flaps of 30. Missed approach will be set at 3,000 and heading of 010 with TOG on standby, and the auto throttle and autopilot will be engaged at decision height, which is 502 MSL. And that is basically our flight for today, a summary, a departure briefing for myself and my co-pilot. Okay, inside the plane here, we're going to use EasyDock to navigate around. Basically have 5 preset views set up here. One for the PIC, the overhead panel, aft overhead panel, jumping down to the main instruments, to the pedestal and the throttle quadrant, to the radios, and back to the PIC. So hopefully that's not too disorienting, and hopefully it continues to work as I make my way through this power-up. Okay, so we're going to jump up to the overhead panel and give it some battery power first of all. We'll get the APU started here so that our RISs and position can be set up. While I'm waiting for the exhaust gas temperature to rise and stabilize, we'll just do a few other checks here. The alternate flaps guard is down, alternate flaps are off, the flight control guards are down, standby power guards down, generator disconnects down, bus transfer down, and the fuel crossfeed is closed. Fuel pumps are also off at this point. I'm just waiting for the generator light to appear. There it is. And we'll jump up to the aft overhead panel now. Just my ID to prove that it's actually my flight. Taking off runway 19 left, which will already be put into the departure. We'll plug the same in for the arrival runway, activate the route, and execute. Okay, performance initiation. Actually, before this, we'll jump back to our FS actions to set up our fuel. A third of a tank comes close to what we need, but it's actually 15,825. We'll load the payload at 80%. And the ground connections we can clear. The parking brake is on, so we can just remove the chocks and the pitot covers, and we can go back to the FMC programming. Zero fuel weight is automatically calculated for us. We'll use reserves and a cost index of 5. Cruising altitude of 6,000 with no winds. Okay. And when limit, we're doing a normal takeoff and a normal non-derated climb. Takeoff with 5 flaps, and the center of gravity's calculated for us. Just to update the runway condition and the acceleration and reduction. Information. Now enter our V speeds. And back in the legs we have a discontinuity, which we'll just remove here and execute. Okay, carrying on, the emergency exit lights, guards can be closed, passenger signs armed, wiper blades are parked, window heat is on, probe heat on. The engine and wing anti-ices are all off. The engine hydraulic pumps are on. Electric hydraulic pumps are off. Recirculating Fans are set to auto. The ISO valve is open. The engine and APU bleeds are on. We'll reset our cruising altitude of 6,000, coming back to land at Dallas at 300. Pressure mode is automatic. The only light that we need on right now is steady, all others off. The ignition will start off with the right engine, and both starter switches are off. We'll be using radios off of the AML VOR, which is 113.5, and the localizer back at Dallas is 110.1. Okay. And we might as well set comm to Unicom. Okay, we're going to set up our MCP. Course will be our initial turn to 280. Once we reach 6,000 feet, V2 plus 20 for our IAS. Initial heading, runway heading of 191, and cruising altitude of 6,000. Flight director is on, auto throttle is armed. The autopilot disengage bar is up. The altimeter and standby altimeters are set to 299 here and here. Throttle quadrant, our spree brake is down, reversers are down, spoilers down, flaps down, engine cutoffs, engine start levers are at cutoff, and the parking brake somehow got disengaged and reset to on. Okay, we'll start with FS2 crew, pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Flight checklist. Oxygen. Tested 100%. Tested 100%. Navigation transfer and display switches. Normal. Auto. Window 8. On. Pressurization mode selector. Auto. Flight instruments. Heading 011. Altimeter 2992. Checked. Parking brake. Set. Engine start levers. Cut off. Flight checklist complete.
And just carrying down my own checklist here, procedural checklist. The V speeds have been set. The auto throttle is armed. Initial heading and altimeter, cruising altitude of 6,000 set. Exterior doors, we can close those to show that they are actually open up here and now closed. At this point, we'd be asking for ATC clearance to start. We'll put on our electric hydraulic pumps and the fuel pumps. Asking for permission to start. We'll turn on our anti-collision light and do another checklist with our first officer. Notice that our yaw damper needs to be reset. And to the checklist. Already preset.
Free and zero. Taxi and takeoff briefing. Completed. Before start checklist completed to the line. Before start checklist below the line. Flight deck door, listed blocked. Anti-collision light on. Before start checklist complete. Start sequence is 2 then 1. Check.
So before we start engine 2, we're just going to push back here and get rid of the jetway. Chocks and pylons have been removed. Parking brake is still on. We'll remove the parking brake. Start our pushback. And we can jump back inside to do the start procedure, jump up to the overhead, and actually the first officer will take care of this for us. Starting. Good enough for a pushback. We'll stop here, reset the parking brake, and tell the first officer to start with engine 1. Again, we'd be asking for AT clearance at this point to commence our taxi. No ATC, obviously, for this flight today. Okay, so we're clear to taxi to the runway. And just to reorient us here, we're via EFB, we'll be taxiing via Charlie, Kilo, and then Juliet as at the top of the chart here, leading to runway 19 left. Okay, we'll lose the parking brake and begin taxiing here.